Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and we just spent the day on the very first season of Discovery PTR and tackled both the new 20-man Blackwing Lair and 10-man Zul'Gurub. And so, let's go over what's in there and what you can expect. Before we get into that, I want to mention I'm going to be releasing boss guides as usual on my YouTube, as well as a full featured assignment sheet for your raid over on my Patreon. We made one for MC and people loved it, so if you're looking for that link, it's below. Okay, so Blackwing Lair, at the front of the entrance is this conspicuous NPC named Lord Victor Nefrendian with this nice mustache and sunglasses, who gives you some hilarious dialogue and 5 options to turn on and off various trials of the Dragonflight. These are buffs that as you fight in BWL give you various mostly negative effects to complicate your combat that you need to adjust to. Now, loot in BWL today was a bit all over the place. I have a feeling the tables aren't done yet, but it stands to reason turning these on will enable more loot drops just like in Molten Core. He even mentions turning more than 3 on doesn't make things any better for you, so it stands to reason you'll pick 3 and go from there. Okay, what are these buffs? First, let's talk about the ones that aren't the black one, which is the hard mode flag that I think will likely be required for you to get certain extra loot. First up, the red trial. When in combat, you have a chance to gain a debuff on you called Blazing Wounds that does 400 damage every 3 seconds, but also will stack over time if it's not removed. And the only way to remove it is by healing someone over 90% HP. This is similar to Grievous Wounds that we've seen in TBC and beyond, but will go out randomly, so healers, watch it. Next is the blue trial, which puts a blue debuff on you that telegraphs a giant circle that once the debuff expires will pulse, dealing a ton of damage to anyone within the circle, but decreasing for each player in it. So it's a simple stack and soak mechanic that you need to manage. Next up, the green trial, which when put in combat, puts a similar green circle around you randomly, but now when it expires will drop a green cloud of poison to anyone that moves into it. It's simple, just move out of the raid when you get it, drop it off, and move back in. And next, the bronze, which is the only one that can really buff you as much as it debuffs you. It will give you a speed buff or debuff randomly when you're in BWL. This can be handy occasionally when you happen to be moving around, but also can really suck if you need to get somewhere quick and you get slowed. It is pretty silly though, I personally like this one. And finally, the black one called Black Essence. This one only says that Nefarian is watching you, and for each boss, you'll get some extra hard mode mechanic that you wouldn't expect turned on in the raid. For those that did Season of Mastery, you'll recognize some of these. On Razorgore, this big egg will hatch and spawn a chromatic drake that lights up the room with various ground effects and debuffs that you have to avoid. It's not too bad, just have a tank off-tank it while the rest of the raid blenders the other adds and does damage to it while they can. For Veil Straz, instead of Veil starting at 30% HP, he starts at 60% HP, greatly increasing the complication with the various explosive debuffs he does to the raid, as well as a stacking tank buster that you need to account for. On Broodlord Lashslayer, at 50% HP, he'll teleport to the back of the room, and you'll have to rush through the suppression room to face him, dealing with shocking suppression room traps and NPCs before finishing him off there. For Firemaw, you'll get an electricity debuff every time you take any damage on the fight, and when you hit 10 stacks, a static discharge will go out around you, doing damage and chaining to anyone nearby. This gets complicated because you're also stacking a Flame Buffet. For Evan Rock and Firemaw, you'll be facing a red light, green light mechanic, while also needing to swap between the bosses as they stack different elemental buffets on you. This one's not too bad, but it is pretty funny when someone doesn't realize that they shouldn't move around. Now, for Chromagus and Nefarian, we didn't actually get to test them very well because it seems like Chromagus was bugged at this point. From what we can guess, there will be certain debuffs that go out and you need to manage, and eventually a frost debuff will go on someone, you dispel it, and an ice block that you have to hide behind to avoid the various AoE breaths that he does so you can survive. We'll see. It wasn't giving us any debuff, so I'll report back once it's fixed. And yeah, didn't get to try Nefarian with the black debuff, TBD. Okay, so that's BWL. It was pretty fun, and I hope we get like rotating debuffs of some kind. Some of these interact in silly ways, like the green and the blue having to stack but also get away from the player, so we'll see how they handle this. Personally, I did like them. After BWL, we head over to ZG, and this place wasn't too different. It has been reduced to a 10-man, so things moved really quick, but we discovered that when you kill the priestesses of Hakkar, rather than just them being dead, their animal spirits stay behind and let you interact with them. If you talk to them, they'll bless you with a specific buff, giving you a permanent adjustment in ZG that changes how you play a bit. Now, you can only get one of these buffs, but they're each pretty interesting. For the snake boss, you get a buff called Blessing of Hethys that has a chance on attack or spellcast to do nature damage to nearby enemies. For the panther boss, this is my favorite, you get a Blessing of Bethic, giving you permanent stealth while out of combat, and bonus damage on the next attack or spell after being out of combat for 5 seconds. Simon Ice told me he snapshotted something with this and was doing incredible damage. Plus, the stealth thing is super cool. Running around the instance mounted and in stealth is hilarious. I'm a big fan. Okay, the tiger boss, Blessing of Shirvala, gives your attacks and spells a powerful bleed on your current target. As far as we could tell, this doesn't stack, so only one player will get the bleed, but it was doing great damage. Okay, for the spider boss, Blessing of Shadra, where you have a chance on attack or spell cast to spawn little spider eggs that will eventually spawn little spiders that, of course, bite up your enemies. It's pretty cool flavor. I personally like this one. And finally, Blessing of Hyreek, giving you 5% of all of your damage back as life. This one's really cool, although we didn't get to experiment with it too much. Okay, and finally, Hakkar himself. You can choose not to kill any of the priestesses, as we've heard in the past, and it buffs Hakkar, giving him a specific ability based around which priest you left up. Now, this wasn't too difficult. I would have liked to see this challenge buffed a bit more, but it was quite fun and interesting, juggling all the little mechanics that he gets. Alright, and that's the PTR. Like I mentioned, I'll be releasing an assignment sheet for BWL soon, as well as plenty of guides and Season of Discovery info as we get it, in addition to my normal Cataclysm stuff. Blizzard, please give us Firelands as soon as possible. What about the gnome? Oh! Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one. It's Garrick! Poggers! We did it! We discovered!